I need to reveal something that almost every serious photographer knows and does quietly, but almost never admits publicly. And yeah, I'll probably get absolutely smashed in the comments by some of you, but I don't care, because once you understand this, I absolutely guarantee that your photos will get stronger. And it's not like you're gonna have to do something difficult. This is actually one of the easiest things that you can do. And while we're at it, I'm gonna destroy a very silly myth too. Those photographers who really like to cling onto rigid dogmas are really not gonna like what I'm gonna share in this video. Okay, so look at this famous photo by Elliot Erwitt. Now this one by Henri Cartier-Bresson. And this by his wife, Martine Frank. This portrait of Margaret Thatcher by Peter Marlowe. And I will include one color photo too. Also a pretty famous one from Jonas Bendixen's project Satellites. What do these iconic images have in common? What's the secret thread running through all of them? We're coming back to that. Keep it in your mind. Before I answer that question, let me ask you something. When you find a scene with potential, how many photos do you make of it? Let's say that it's a real life moment. People moving, light shifting. What do you actually do? Are you the kind of person that makes 2 or 3 frames and then says, yeah, I nailed it, I got it? Or do you absolutely milk the situation because you think that something special might happen and you may never get a chance to photograph anything like this again? Again, hold that thought. It is going to become very important in just a moment. Let me show you exactly why shooting more matters and why serious photographers don't treat photography like archery. One arrow, one attempt. Take this first example from when I was shooting the carnival. I really like this portrait. The movement of the shiny strips is a visual cue for wind, and it brings the image to life. These strips also block out a part of his face, as a result adding a bit of mystery. His eyes represent, well, a bit of his character, but also their tired eyes. So they hint at a story. Now, this moment didn't just magically appear for me. To get this frame, I shot 34 other frames, because that's how the real process looks. You spot something with potential, you notice visual cues, movement, expression, maybe the possibility for something special, and you keep shooting. Because you know that the right combination might appear for just a fraction of a second, and you continue shooting some more, because sometimes the best moment isn't the one that you expected. Now compare this to the next example. These card players, this frozen movement here, it's a visual cue for tension. Then there are these fascinating faces and that background character, their traditional hats. This shoot involved 78 frames. Watching for gestures, for visual cues that signal culture, like these men's traditional hats. Then the tension in the body language, the personalities on the faces of these men. And a sense of story, of course. You're adjusting angles, you're waiting for the peak moment, you're trying to get the clearest, strongest communication of what's unfolding. In reality, I was only really able to identify this moment when I saw everything on the computer screen later that night. So again, even if you think you got the moment, your frame, you still keep shooting. Because maybe something even better can happen right after. In this case, there were actually a few frames that work, but because I kept shooting, I ended up with this one, where I feel everything really comes together. Okay, finally, this image of a flamenco dancer. This was for a gig that I had in Andalusia, Spain, a real flamenco performance. She was moving fast, changing expression a few times every second, and there were so many potential visual cues here. I shot a lot. Burst mode. Eventually changed angle, shot more because the intensity of flamenco lives in gesture, in expression, and in the case of a still image, it's in motion blur. Motion blur is an effective visual cue for fast movement, for the energy of this dance. It's next to impossible to get all that I'm talking about in one single click. If I shot just one single frame and got this shot, that would be the equivalent to finding a needle in a haystack. This is the image where I felt everything came together. Now, in reality, a few of these images work, but again, I kept shooting from a different angle, just in case. Before you scream, shit, what you're doing is spray and pray. No, it's not. But before I explain, let's get back to the masters. While preparing for this video, I came across the contact sheets for these famous photos that I showed you in the beginning. And what I found completely destroys the one shot, one attempt, or even a few attempts mythology. Take this Elliott Erwitt image. Here's the contact sheet, 23 frames. It's not a wildly dynamic scene, yet he explores, adjusts, refines. No burst mode, no high frames per second, yet he still works the scene deliberately. Now look at Cartier-Bresson's image. Yes, he's the man that brought us the decisive moment. One of the most misunderstood ideas in photography is that Cartier-Bresson was this photo sniper who would observe a scene and with one magical press of a shutter would nail the shot most of the time. On the contact sheet, we see 16 frames. Exploring, adjusting, checking for different visual cues as the scene develops. You can clearly see him working the moment. Now Martine Frank's image. 24 frames on the contact sheet. Same framing, same scene, most of the time, just waiting and hoping for the one moment with the strongest meaning. She picked her image, but I'm almost certain that she wasn't 100% sure in the moment that she got the shot. So she kept shooting, because every serious photographer knows maybe something else will happen. Peter Marlowe's portrait of Margaret Thatcher. Full roll, 36 exposures. The differences between some of these frames are just tiny. But in some of them, the expressions, the posture, the micro shifts, these become visual cues that completely change the visual charge of the portrait. He wasn't trying to be efficient. He was giving himself and his editors the best possible options. Jonas Bendixen's image from the Satellites project. On the contact sheet, we see that he explores angles, waits, adjusts. He more or less finds his framing, anticipates something, captures the shot that we all know, and then adjusts and keeps going. Real photographers think, don't stop, something else might unfold. So here's what all of this tells us. These masters never intended to make just one or two or even three frames. They explored visual cues. They chased gesture, timing, nuance. And remember, these were all shot on film, which means that there were maximum 36 exposures before you needed to reload and possibly miss the moment. Yet they still made frames upon frames. Why? I think you're already seeing it, but we'll come back to what all of this is pointing to. There's something that really bothers photographers who rely on tradition and dogma instead of actually looking for what makes a powerful photo. Back in the day, nailing focus, exposing properly, developing film, printing in the darkroom, those were real achievements. You needed skill, you needed patience. But the world changed. Today, a sharp photo isn't special. A well-exposed photo isn't special. Shooting in the dark isn't special. Technology has made all of that much easier. Being a good craftsperson isn't like heroic anymore. It's normal. The baseline is high now. Pretty much anybody can make an in-focus photo that's well exposed and even make a decent print of it. But here's the catch. The hard part is still hard. Photos with meaning, story, mood, atmosphere, these are still not as common. That part hasn't gotten easier. So the real question is this: how do you make images that truly communicate something? For me, the answer is something that I've already hinted at a few times. Visual cues. They're the elements in the frame that suggest more than what they literally are. The hints of story, mood, emotion. And understanding visual cues, using them intentionally, is far more relevant today than being a technical craft hero. In many ways, visual cues are the essence of photography, and mastering them is what actually helps you express yourself with clarity. Because the real challenge isn't the craft anymore. It's about capturing the right visual cues at the right moment. It's about timing your frames, reading a scene, recognizing when everything aligns. And then it's about identifying the one photograph that pulls all of the visual cues together. The one frame that communicates the story, the mood, and the emotion in the strongest possible way. The thing is, visual cues are at the base of everything that I do photographically. So I made an entire program to teach others this method. It's packed with exercises, video lessons, a PDF ebook to learn on the go, and an AI-powered visual cues coach, which tells you whether you're getting it and what you still need to do to improve. Just wanted to mention that, and the link is below in the description. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that all the manual controls are useless. Of course, they matter in certain situations, especially in challenging light and with older film cameras. But that's a niche, and outside of that niche, I don't know anybody who says, I want my photography to be more difficult. We use the tools that let us work effectively with as little friction as possible, which brings us to the myth that quietly stops more photographers than anything else. The spray and pray myth. I hate this phrase, spray and pray. Some people use it to shame burst shooting, but here's the truth. I'm not convinced that spray and pray exists among even half-serious photographers. Spray and pray is when you kind of just point the camera at something and shoot without paying attention, while hoping or praying that you actually get something. I never met anyone who actually shoots like that, because even when you are shooting in bursts, there's always intent. You're watching for a specific fraction of a second, a gesture, a peak, an expression. You know that real moments are not static. They live in micro variations that change dozens of times per second. This is what burst mode is for, and this is why serious photographers use it. Using your tools to capture the exact right moment is not laziness, it's not cheating, it's not spray and pray. And if anyone has ever made you feel guilty or like less of a photographer for shooting in burst mode, then let that go right now. You really should be shooting in bursts when the moment calls for it. If nothing else, that's how you dramatically increase your chances of capturing real moments. And yeah, I'm convinced that the legends would have done it too. They just worked within limitations in their time. All right, here's something that will really upset some people, but this is also why gatekeeping collapses the moment that you see how real photographers actually work. If I could shoot 1,000 frames in a few seconds at insanely high frame rates, in full raw quality, and then choose the exact moment I want, I would happily do it. Zero hesitation. We're almost already there with the tech, and when there is a tool that's capable of doing this and it is as accessible as a mirrorless camera now, if this tool allows me to capture the millisecond between a blink and a smile, then I want that tool. And I already know what some of you will say. That's not photography. Well, I remember back in the day when digital photography was still relatively new, I had this old school photographer tell me once, digital photography isn't real photography. It's just image making. Photography only happens when light interacts with film. And you know what? Fine, call me an image maker. Because I don't care about the label, I care about the experience, the adventures, the people I meet, the moments, and the final photograph. Does the image I ended up with reflect how I felt? Does it carry atmosphere, emotion, story? That's what matters, not whether you nailed it in one frame. Most of the time, if you try to be a photo sniper, you'll just miss the moment. And even if you don't, who cares? It doesn't make the image any better if you made it in one attempt or two or three. This philosophy is what all of those masters, all of their contact sheets, all of my sequences were pointing to. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when burst mode is pointless. Still life, architecture, landscapes with no movement. If nothing is changing, I turn burst mode off. I don't need 100 identical frames. But if there is even a chance for movement, burst mode goes right back on. My rule is simple. If something is changing, I shoot in bursts. If nothing is changing, I don't. I'll still explore angles, I'll still shoot multiple frames, but I will not shoot dozens of them unless the moment calls for it. Even if I were shooting at 120 frames per second, it's not like I'd just be holding in the shutter and that's it. No, I would still be anticipating the moment when everything comes together. With the available technology, the real authorship is now in recognition, intent, and selection. Which frame carries the strongest visual cues? Which moment truly communicates the energy of what was happening? Which one creates the strongest sense of narrative and atmosphere? That's the conversation that matters, not how many frames you shot. Some people cling to old definitions of photography because it ties in with their identity. I'm a true photographer because I do it the hard way. If that makes them happy, then great, but don't tell the rest of us who like experimenting and who like trying out new tools that what we do is not photography. We live in a different time and technology has changed everything. I am so convinced that the point of photography is expression, it's creativity, it's the experiences behind the photos. It's not mechanical constraints that technology has solved for us long ago. I believe that many photographers, probably even most photographers, feel exactly the same way as I do. You probably feel the same too. For you, you probably care much more about the story and the meaning of a photo than being a photo sniper. It's just that you feel pressured by the loudest voices in the room. So consider this video your permission slip. Build your photographic practice on what actually matters: intent, visual cues, story, and thoughtful selection. Not trying to get the winning image in as few attempts as possible. Because when you stop worrying whether you're still doing photography while firing off frames in burst mode, you quite simply end up with more keepers to choose from, with stronger moments, stronger expressions, and even a better chance at capturing the atmosphere and the mood of a scene. But here's the catch. You will not capture that atmosphere and that mood consistently unless you understand light. Light is the foundation. You probably already heard how crucial it is in photography, but sometimes it's made to seem so mystical and so complex. But it's not. You can understand it quickly, and the video on the screen will help you.